As we sit comfortably, let's just close our eyes and begin to become aware of our breath. Feel the breath as it enters with a cool feeling, and warming as it gently travels down into your lungs. Fill your lungs with a deep inhale, bringing in energy, vitality, and life into your body. And as you exhale, feel your body releasing toxins, stress, and any negativity that is accumulated over the week. Let's just stay with this breath. Feel that deep peace. Slowly inhale in through your nose, down into your lungs, and out through your mouth, and just feel the energy pulse throughout your body. Become aware of the warmth and tingling of every cell. Feel the energy that's radiating out from you into your extended environment. The same energy that's in every part of nature and in every living thing. Bring all those energies together. Feel how they were all in unity. Feel them as one. Visualize that energy as shining brighter than the sun. Bring that shining glow of bright energy up to the crown of your head. And slowly feel it starting to travel down into your body from the top of your head, down your face and neck, traveling down to your shoulders, and way down into your arms, to the tips of your fingers. Feel the healing energy and light going down into your chest, traveling down to your hips. Feel it continue to travel down your legs all the way to the tips of your toes. Your whole body is now filled with divine healing, light, and energy. Allow that healing energy to completely fill any area on your body that needs that healing energy. Feel it warming, healing, and expanding through the entire area. Allow that same healing light to bring peace and healing to the emotional issues or traumas that you may be dealing with. Bring that energy to your awareness of any intentions or desires that you may have. Just hold on to those thoughts, those intentions or desires as you allow the healing energy to bring your deepest desires to life and your intentions into reality. Feel your connection to divine energy and light, and know that all is one. Stay with this deep, relaxing, peaceful feeling of bliss for another minute or so. Now it's time to gently bring yourself back to the now. Allow your mind to slowly transition to awareness of your current situation. Slowly and gently reawaken your mind and body while maintaining that feeling of well-being and positive healing energy. And as we open our eyes, slowly, gently, and reestablish ourselves into the awakened state. And as Rob turns down the meditation music, please join Annie and I in singing Our Thoughts, Our Prayers.
Seek a higher consciousness, a state of peacefulness, and know that God is always there. And every thought becomes a prayer.
Thank you, Annie. He had just finished what he knew would be his last meal. He had passed the cup and the unleavened bread to his disciples and had given them their instructions. He had tried to prepare them for what he knew was to come and had identified and instructed his betrayer to do what he was going to do quickly. After they had finished their meal, he had led the remaining 11 disciples to the place where he knew he would be turned over to his adversaries. You know, it's difficult to imagine the thoughts that must have been racing through his mind as he looked out from the Garden of Gethsemane across the Kidron Valley. He would have known that he was staring across the valley of the shadow of death, as it was described in the Holy Scripture. Because he was steeped in knowledge of the Holy Scriptures, he must have thought about Psalm 23. I'm sure it must have offered him some comfort, just as it has offered comfort to millions of mourners over the centuries and still does, right up to this day. Psalm 23, you all know it. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. He restores my soul. He leads me in paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. For you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil, and my cup overflows. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life. And I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. It's a short prayer, but it's very strong, isn't it? Powerful. Now, the Gospel of Matthew describes the events that occurred after the Last Supper as follows. Matthew 26, 36 through 46. Then Jesus went to the disciples to a place called Gethsemane, and he said to them, "Stay here while I go over there and pray." He took Peter and Zebedee's two sons, that's James and John, with him. But he was beginning to feel deep anguish. Then he said to them, "My anguish is so great that I feel as if I'm dying. Wait here and stay awake with me." After walking a little farther, he quickly bowed with his face to the ground and prayed, "Father, if it's possible, let this cup be taken away from me, but let your will be done rather than mine." Then when he went back to his disciples, he found them asleep. And he said to Peter, now Peter, remember, represents faith. He said, "Couldn't you stay awake with me for 1 hour? Stay awake and pray that you won't be tempted." Peter, you want to do what's right, but you're weak. Then he went away for a second time and prayed, "Father, if this cup cannot be taken away unless I drink it, let your will be done." But then when he came back, he found them asleep again because they just couldn't keep their eyes open. So you see what's happening. He's struggling here. This is Jesus. He's struggling. He's struggling with faith. He's struggling with wisdom, which is what James represents, and love too, which is John. Just like we do, right? Sometimes. After leaving them again, he went away and prayed the same prayer a third time. Finally, he came back to the disciples and said to them, "You might as well sleep now. The time is near for the Son of Man to be handed over to sinners. Get up, let's go. The one who's betraying me is near." To me, this is one of the most powerful stories in the entire Bible. It's powerful for me because we can clearly see and relate to the human nature of Jesus in this story. He's in absolute anguish because he knew soldiers were coming for him. In fact, he probably could have heard them as they traveled up the same path he and his disciples had just traveled, which is just to the north of where he was amongst the olive trees. And I've been there. I've traveled up that path. It's a long, winding path, and I walked all the way up it because they won't let you drive. So you had to walk up it, and as you look out from the Garden of Gethsemane, you can see the Kidron Valley below. Before the Kidron Valley, you'll see tombs, which there are ancient tombs there. So he would have seen this valley of death staring out into the darkness. He would have seen the Temple Mount. He probably would have seen the Antonia Fortress where the soldiers were. And they're on the north side of the temple too. And so they would have come right down that path. If they were carrying torches, he would have seen the whole thing from where he was. But I think it's important to point out a few things. First of all, he knew he was going to be betrayed. He knew exactly who was going to betray him. He went directly to the place where he knew he would be arrested. He knew the fate that awaited him after his arrest. When he heard the soldiers coming, he chose not to run. In fact, he could have changed his fate at many points in this story. So what is he demonstrating here? What can we learn from this? He is actually co-creating the story with the Father. Right?
Yes.
You might say he created it entirely, depending on what you believe, but to me it looks like a co-creation. Now next week our speaker will be discussing the prayers that he said that night in their meeting, their Baptistical meeting, etc. But today we are just going to focus on prayer in general. Specifically, I'm going to talk about prayer and what it does for us. You know, our goal as New Thought Christians is to pray unceasingly. Just as the Apostle Paul instructed us to do in 1 Thessalonians 5:16 through 18, where he said, "Rejoice always, pray without ceasing, give thanks in all circumstances, for this is the will of God in Christ Jesus in you." So, that's pretty simple. So I guess that's it. See you guys.
Do it.
Well, of course, it's not simple. We all know that it's not easy. But you know, in my experience, nothing worthwhile is ever easy. I'm sure you've noticed the same thing as you travel through your lives. But we all know that prayer is worthwhile. And it's actually essential for most of us, probably all of us, just to get through our day. In the Revealing Word, Charles Fillmore describes prayer this way. Prayer is the most highly accelerated mind action. It steps up mental action until man's consciousness synchronizes with Christ's mind. It is the language of spirituality, and when developed, it makes man master in the realm of creative ideas. Well, you know, that's Fillmorean language there. So you have to take it one piece at a time. But really, all you really need to pay attention here is, that's our goal, isn't it? To synchronize. He always had those words, you know, that you don't use every day. But it's our goal to synchronize our mind with Christ's mind. That's why we're here. This is how we achieve atonement, or more specifically, at one-ment, which means to embody the fullness of human divinity. Jesus was able to do this, and eventually he was able to do this without ceasing. So how do we do it? Well, as we just sang, we know our thoughts are prayers. And so we need to keep those thoughts positive. As we go through our day, we can use denials to cleanse or baptize our minds over and over as many times as necessary. That, by the way, that really, if you think about it, isn't that what a baptism is? It's a cleansing. A denial is a cleansing. That's why we use denials along with the affirmations to cleanse ourselves first before we, you all get it. We have to deny any thoughts of lack, of illness, of fear, of anger, etc. And as we do this, remember that God is always 100% good. So if you want to be in atonement with God, reject those negative thoughts and replace them with positive ones. And we do this with affirmations. We all know this. We've been here for years, most of us. For me, reciting the prayer of protection is the best way to stay positive. I use it all the time. So if you don't have it memorized, you can write it down or just keep it handy. And we used to have these little cards that were there in the welcome packets with the prayer of protection on them. I've got it on my house, all over my door as I leave. I've got it on my refrigerator because that's where I spend most of my time getting snacks.
Yay.
Obviously. But if you don't have it, just, write it down and keep it handy. Or if you have your favorite prayer, just use that. Just make sure that it's positive. Don't beg for help in attaining a specific outcome. Allow yourself room to receive an even better outcome than the one you are asking for. Remember, always remember that it's God's will to give you the entire kingdom. In other words, he wants the ultimate good for you.
Yes, he does.
To receive that good, though, we have to open our consciousness to receive it. We do that by maintaining a consciousness of gratitude. That's why we do the gratitude portion of our service. And it's one of my favorite parts of the service. Gratitude opens us up to receive our blessings more easily. So try to be grateful for every situation you find yourself in, no matter how rough that situation may seem. Look at every situation as an opportunity to increase your understanding and to practice having synchronicity, as Philmore would say, with Christ's Spirit. We all know it's easy to say, but we all know it's much harder to do. I know this talk's had a lot of Bible in it already for a New Thought Church, but I just wanted to add one of my favorite stories because it demonstrates how difficult it can be to keep your mind synchronized with God. You're getting a heavy dose of Bible today. But it's Lent, right? Can't do it then. When can you do it? It's known as the story of the Syro-Phoenician woman, and it's in both Mark and Matthew. I want you to keep in mind as I read this, Jesus is exhausted at this point in our story, and he's hungry. He had just traveled a very long way and had to deal with crowds of people begging him for help. He was dusty roads. He's got Pharisee priests coming up and harassing him and asking him all his questions. He's got questions from his disciples all day long. He's trying to answer, and as he's walking along. So I want you to picture that being in that state of mind. The story goes, and he entered a house and did not want anyone to know, yet he could not be hidden. But immediately a woman whose little daughter had an unclean spirit heard of him and came and fell down at his feet. Now the woman was a Gentile, a Syro-Phoenician by birth, and she begged him to cast the demon out of her daughter. Now keep in mind, he's trying to be alone. He needs to rest. He's in a house. He wants to meditate and pray and maybe have a nice dinner, you know. He's done more work than anybody else had all day long. And here's this woman begging him for help. One more woman in his private place where he's going to be with the Father. He's going to refresh himself, but before he gets to do that, she's begging him for another miracle. He's irritated. He's just irritated. You know he's irritated because he says, let the children, he means Jews, children of God, be fed first, for it is not right to take the children's bread and throw it to the dogs.
Whoa, that's harsh.
That is harsh. Of course, I would never say anything that harsh. But that's why I can relate to it, right? But the woman answered him, yes, Lord, yet even the dogs under the table eat the children's crumbs. And he said to her, for this statement you may go your way. The demon has left your daughter. And she went home and found the child lying in bed and the demon gone. So this story shows that even Jesus can get annoyed under certain circumstances. I don't think the Bible, without stories like this, would have half as much meaning. If he were perfect all the time, how could we even relate to that?
Right.
What lessons would we learn from that? How would that help us? He's perfect. That's great. You know, worship him. But I'm, hopeless. But you notice how fast he comes back to the Christ consciousness. The reason he could do that is because Jesus prayed without ceasing. He was never that far away. Sure, he might have slipped here and there, like it just showed. But he was praying unceasingly as he's walking down the dirty road, and as he's got Pharisees coming and asking him out, trying to trick him with all these trick questions, and he's got earnest disciples, so naive, fishermen. They weren't educated. He's got to explain all these things to them. But you might be thinking, this is a hard task, and it is. We're all busy. We all have things that we're doing. I mean, I'm driving my semi. I've got a guy cutting me off. I'm watching. I've got bells and whistles and lights from the truck going off all the time. And I'm trying to get over to let somebody on the expressway, but the person next to me is not moving. They're staying right next to my tires. And I can't get over, and I can't slow down, and I've got somebody coming. I mean, and I'm sure you've all been there. You know, we're all out in the world. We're all out in traffic. Some of you are brave souls, and you even like to go shopping. I mean, good grief, I can't even imagine. I can imagine it, but I just get it over with. So why? Why does it have to be so hard? You know, I'm in several discussion groups, and someone was talking the other day, and they said they knew that God is 100% good and wants us to have his entire kingdom, which is also 100% good. So why does he need us to pray? I mean, shouldn't it just be there? God is 100% good. He wants us to have 100% good. Why aren't our lives 100% good? And why don't we know that our lives are 100% good? Why do we have to pray for these things? Shouldn't they just be there? No. You see, the answer is fairly easy when you think about it. Prayer is what allows us to see ourselves as co-creators. It helps us become a cause of what's happening. And I've got a little story that might demonstrate that to you. It's not a Bible story this time. It's more modern. Okay? There was this man, and he was a builder by trade. He could build anything. He built decks, porches. In fact, he could build an entire house if he needed to or wanted to. He'd done it. He knew everything there was to know about building structures. He was also a very good father, and he had 6 sons. So one day he wanted to build a shed in his backyard, and he decided that he would get his 6 sons to help him. It took him all morning and half the afternoon to round up all 6 sons. Yeah. 2 were playing video games, 2 were at baseball practice, where their grandmother was watching. And the oldest 2 were out with friends somewhere. God only knows what they were up to. Then after he gathered them all together, he had to buy them all food and water, so they'd be able to help him without fainting from hunger or thirst. He didn't need that drama, so McDonald's. Plus he needed to equip them with 6 sets of tools, and that wasn't cheap. He went to Home Depot and put it on his credit card. Actually, the price of these supplies and the tools and the food and the water cost about as much as the wood and nails and shingles and paint you needed to build the shed. If you were add up all the effort it took to track down and instruct these boys on how to build this shed, it probably would have been much faster and cheaper to just build the shed himself. But eventually the shed was built, and it was beautiful. It was perfect. Well, after its completion, every single day, the man would sit and look at the shed as he drank his coffee. That shed brought him more joy than just about anything you can imagine. You see, not only was it beautiful to look at and useful for storing his tools, far more importantly, it contained memories. Right? Memories of the time he and his son spent building that shed together were more valuable than the shed or the tools that it contained by far. For the rest of his life, he was also comforted by the knowledge that while building that shed with his children, the bonds between him and his boys had become so strong. The experience of building that shed had also created bonds amongst the 6 boys that would last far longer and were far stronger than that sturdy shed itself. The most important thing, he was filled with satisfaction that each of his boys had grown up and were now raising their own kids, and each one had been able to build their own sheds with their kids. So sometimes prayer can be difficult, and to pray without ceasing can seem impossible to do at times, but prayer is necessary for us. It doesn't ever change God, we all know that. God is unchangeable, he's the same forever and always. It doesn't even change God's plans for us. But it does change us because it keeps us aware that we are co-creators or co-manifestors with God. Now let me be clear, I want to be totally clear. Prayer does not make us co-creators with God. It just keeps us aware that we are. As children of God, we are born as co-creators. Our goal, as Reverend Brian said at the end of our Lessons in Truth class last week, was to move beyond merely being co-creators, but to become skilled creators in our own right. Just as the father in the story I just told you taught his children, our Father, our Creator, our God, is trying to teach us how to become creators. Except our task isn't to build a shed, it's to build an entire kingdom on earth, just as it is in heaven. Just as the Lord's Prayer says, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven, right?
Right.
That's our job. Therefore, if we want to reside within that kingdom that God has promised us, learn to pray without ceasing. Even if you slip, like Jesus did with the Syrophoenician woman, keep trying, keep at it, keep going until you get it. No matter what you do, don't stop trying, no matter how many times or how hard it gets. So this is, I think it was a fairly short talk, but I'm almost finished. We absolutely can do this if we keep trying. Absolutely. Don't have a doubt. We can do this if we keep trying. How do we know? What's in the Bible? That's how we know. Jesus tells us why we can do this in John 10:34. He's referencing Psalm 82:6, and this is another story where he's being harassed. But he said, when he quoted Psalm 82:6, states, I said, you are gods and you are all sons of the Most High. We are all sons of the Most High and daughters. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you believe that?
I believe it.
Well, then do it. We can't fail, right? It's that simple, guys. Have a good afternoon, and thank you. And with that, it's time for Andy to sing us another song to bless us.
I remembered what I wanted to be grateful for. The basement's dry.
Oh, yeah, we're all great. Dry basements, yep.
Thank you, Brett. That was very good.
our eyes to watch us where we go and help us to realize. Uh-oh. Let this be our prayer. Ease our way. Us to the place. Guide us with your